Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be kicking off a series of reviews using my little complete collection, little tiny collection of TinTin. This is the complete TinTin minus TinTin in the Congo, which is one that they don't reprint. I'll go into that a little bit later because there's plenty of offensive stuff in some of these other books. But it's a 7 or 8 book little collection I've got that has 2 or 3 TinTin books per book. So this first one that I've got has TinTin in the Land of the Soviets and TinTin in America. Today I'll be taking a look at the TinTin in the Land of the Soviets. So the TinTin in the Land of the Soviets was a black and white, and you can see the artwork is a little bit cruder than you would see in later TinTin work. But this is something that was serialized in a magazine. I'm not even going to attempt to try and pronounce. And this was from 1929 to 1930, and it was an anti-communist satire, the strip that was running. The first strip starts off here with kind of an explanation of what the strip is, and it's saying that this magazine, La Petite XX to the E power, we are always eager to satisfy our readers and keep them up to date on foreign affairs, and have therefore sent TinTin, one of our top reporters, to Soviet Russia. Each week we shall bring you news of his many adventures. So yeah, it's cool to see the first Tin stuff. You see that the art's cruder, the character's not totally worked out. It's fun to watch the art improve pretty rapidly in this first one and see Herge develop some of his typical tricks. For example, on this page here, you get a lot of the feet walking along the bottom of the panel. He's not using it totally as a horizon line yet. Like in this one, the horizon line is higher up still because I'm able to see across the street. Whereas in this one, it has that very like Egyptian hieroglyphic feel almost, where it's all just right up along the panel border. So seeing that develop is kind of interesting. Seeing Herge not really have a full grasp of perspective quite totally yet early is also interesting and encouraging. Even though this is pretty early, you can see the development happening very fast, even just from like the beginning strip to, 4 or 5 weeks later. I had to note that this one here very much felt like a drawing that Brandon Graham might make, like the line quality and stuff. I know Brandon's hugely influenced by Herge, Herge, so it's fun to see that even in the earliest work that I'm sure Brandon wasn't looking at as a young artist. There's a lot of just like really fun, absurd cartoon physics and violence in these books. One thing Brandon has pointed out to me is that like the head injury slapstick joke is something that comes up so often that when he reads Tintin, he likes to count them. So I was doing that. This is number 2 in this book so far. But the injuries and stuff are just so absurd, and like the little Deus Ex Machina mechanisms that come in to save Tintin from them are absurd. In this one, he actually like drives a car right in front of a train, and the car gets blasted to bits, but Tintin's still there just with the hurt head. That's the second head bang in that one. And we see here we've got our third headbang, but also Tintin dog Snowy is being a very good dog. And I like this subversion of the typical banana peel slip trick that this guy set it up for Tintin to slip on, and the dog comes over and like just gets rid of it, not even trying to trip this guy up, and then comes back on him. So yeah, good slapstick stuff. That's the type of humor to expect in here, obviously. The action in this early stuff he's struggling with. It's pretty stiff action. But yeah, this is cool to see Edge working on this. Then we're also looking at head injuries 9 through 11 there. Every now and then Edge goes into a different kind of humor than like the slapstick, someone getting hurt humor. There's actually some pretty interesting and funny jokes being made here and there when he does get to it. Personally, as someone who's reading this now as an adult, that would be more of that would be to my liking. It's nice stuff. Like this is an example of that here, where they're going into a Soviet town and they're faking that they're successful and wealthy and that work is happening. So you have this lady banging on a piece of metal to create the sound of work going on. And Snowy says, "Oh, it must be a Russian jazz band." There's another slightly more adult joke in here about, since this is about the Soviet era, they're talking about the Communist Party here, and everyone's showing up to vote, and they just hold them at gunpoint and says, "Okay, we got to vote, we got to vote. All right, great. The Communist Party's elected again." Some really fun stuff going on this spread with like the rhythms of the panel divisions, and then in this one, you've got this panel that's split by the door dividing the room that TinTin's in from these guys that are trying to get him. But you also have it lined up with this middle panel border here. And then on the next page, you have this fun like push and pull where they're pushing in and getting a little more claustrophobic on TinTin, and then hitting the door and getting it to warp. And then that continues on to the next page where we get head traumas 14 and 15 as these guys come through the door, and then TinTin opens it and causes another like gag there. And you can see Snowy here watching it all go by as well. But I really like how that vertical line kind of frames all of the action for that in this sequence. This page here shows some more like really fun and strange distortions in the art. I especially like this panel here where the car is really distorting to like show the action of running away and then like skidding off the road as the tires go out of control there. They're lit on fire. Some of this art in black and white reminds me of a lot of the stuff I'm seeing today too. I can't think of names off the top of my head. Antoine Coss is one that comes to mind, but just some of the strange, like, especially in the more action sequences, I feel like this image even has like a Yokoyama Yuichi type of vibe to it. I don't know. In the action sequences, I'm seeing a lot of different things that feel very modern to me. So I noted earlier when we were looking at the cover that this volume didn't have the TinTin in the Congo, which I think would have been the one in between the Sovietland and the Americas. That's my biggest complaint about this series, is that it doesn't have any really kind of extra information like to contextualize these. I'm not someone who like wants to read or has the time. I would like to read actually, but I can't read these big historical essays. But some things that like give basic dates and context and talk about stuff like that. I had to do a little bit of looking, but this one's leaving out TinTin in the Congo, which is notoriously full of offensively racist characters and things like that, so it doesn't get published. But I mean, this is a book being made in 1929, 1930, and also it's got racist characters everywhere else. So like here we have, I assume this character is supposed to be Chinese, and Snowy has him fall down on these spikes here. And he screams, and then instead of talking, he does like a bunch of weird musical noises, screams in like a Chinese symbol, and then just has all of the torture rack and all of the visual characteristics that you would see of, an offensive stereotyped cartoon of a Chinese guy. So it's strange to me that they're not collecting the Congo one. I don't mind if that's like Herge doesn't want it printed, that's fine. But some more like context to go, especially like a little one-page blurb or one paragraph blurb about each at the beginning, given that a lot of this work is historically important, would be useful and interesting. One of the things that I'm trying to figure out while I'm looking at this, and it partly, mostly, entirely just because I'm not that great with my comics history, this is far enough back now that I'm wondering what the precedents for Herge were. I know, like, going the other way, I can see influences, but I'd be curious to see some of his influences, especially being able to see this early work, that it's not the specific refined look that I'm used to from Herge. It makes me wonder that quite a bit. This page also has, this is where you really see the idea of the propaganda and the satire popping up. So here we have them now getting behind like this facade city that's been put up, and TinTin gets to see, look at what the Soviets have done to the beautiful city of Moscow, a stinking slum. And it's interesting to see Herge, who I always associate with that really clean line, draw these more like ragged, scratchety, dirty lines to show this old busted up city. Even in this first volume, the action starts getting better and better. Like in this sequence, really fun, where TinTin's rode down a hill, obviously hit his head. That was head injury number 28. And now he's fighting a bear and gets another head injury in there on the bear. Really like the cartooning in this sequence, and you can see that even though it's still pretty stiff, like, early action, like slapstick action cartooning, it looks a lot more fluid on the page, and part of that is because of this really nice composition that everything's happening against. In this sequence here, TinTin's flying away in a plane that's going to crash, and he comes down onto the Tempelhof Aerodrome, Tempelhof Airport in Berlin, Germany, and they talk about that here. No mistake, it's the aerodrome at Tempelhof near Berlin. So we've crossed the Russian frontier a long time ago, now coming into West Berlin, basically. And that one's just fun. Berlin is a place that I lived for 2 months, and I remember very fondly going with a friend and taking a walk around the Tempelhof Airport, which is now, like the big tarmac areas, public park. There are a lot of people skating. So it's just always fun. Like, that's the cool thing about traveling, and then you see that stuff that you've actually been to in a story or a movie, and it makes it more relatable. But it's interesting to see that this is done when it was still a functioning airport. This page here with all the animals is really nice. I feel like other than Snowy, I don't know. I used to read TinTin a ton when I was like 5. I just don't remember it. But really, TinTin was actually like the first comic that I would have... TinTin and Garfield, I would go to the library, and I was always looking for kids' books that had the lettering pointing to the head. I didn't know anything about comics, but I knew that made more sense to me than to have like the Prince Valiant style, or like a lot of kids' books have the word down here and the pictures there. So TinTin was what they had. It's really cool to be revisiting these. I don't remember how much animals play a part of TinTin, but this spread here really surprised me. And then looking at some of the cartooning here, I had to wonder who else was influenced by this, including Tezuka. I know obviously there's plenty of funny animal cartooning going on that you're not worried about Herge being one of those influences. It's not the most dynamic, like great Disney rubbery cartooning of the animals either, but it's fun to see him doing a page like that. And here we are in the last panel. I feel like Herge always goes like hard in the last panel. He'll give you a nice big building shot. This one actually looks like it might have be a photo that's been adjusted on some kind of photo machine. I'm not sure. They wouldn't have had a copy machine, I don't think. But goes hard with the crowd and all the details and everything. And that's always a really nice way to end it. I wish that like that level of detail was all throughout, but I get why he's not doing that, both for simplicity of reading for children, just and time's sake. But yeah, it was really fun to see this first instance of TinTin. Like I said, I read tons of TinTin as a kid. I don't really remember any of them, but it's fun to dip back into that. This is story-wise, hard for me to really engage with, because it is obviously for kids. It's a pretty repetitive, like something bad happens, I get out. Something bad happens, I get out. Someone's head gets hurt. But the art is fun, and this one, particularly in the Land of the Soviets, is fun to see a master being not completely masterful and still forming their abilities. And because of that, I am a little bummed that the TinTin in the Congo was apparently the next one, and I'm a bit bummed that I don't get to see that development, because the time we get to what I believe is the third one, TinTin in America, it's pretty much like what I expect from a TinTin comic. So check in with me next week, and we'll look at TinTin in America.
Yeah.